document versus create.
I'm Jake, and my life is a mix of being a father, a husband, with a myriad of other interests. One of which is trying to start two separate businesses at the same time. One is self-sustaining, and the other is your typical software startup. All this to break away from the 9-to-5 life. And in success and in failure, I want to bring you along in the hopes of you learning from my experiences in real time. So welcome to the pursuit of everything. The leap from a 9-to-5 to a business owner is always the hardest. That transition is the hardest thing you'll ever do in any other business venture after that point. So I recognize that when trying to establish and think about what would be the conduit to that freedom that would allow me to transition from 9-to-5 to a business owner, there were a few basics you had to keep in mind. I in fact did a video about this about a year ago, and a lot of these things still hold true. So I recognized that I needed to start with something that had the lowest barrier to entry. So what that means is there's two kind of fundamentals I think about when really processing what is going to be a profitable business to start first. For one, I recognize that it needed to be something I either had the most knowledge in or the most passion about. And the second thing is, since I'm juggling so many things of being a father, a husband, and working 9-to-5 all on top of that, then I recognized that what I needed to do is I needed to have something that would have the greatest return on investment but lowest barrier to entry. So it needed to be cheap at the beginning, but had the potential to grow into something truly profitable to help me break that cycle of the 9-to-5 life. And for me, the education space always stuck out to me as being the first kind of conduit to breaking the 9-to-5 cycle. It's not necessarily that I'm the most passionate about the education space and formal education, but specifically, I have some knowledge that many people don't. And that is that I've graduated early 3 times and I worked in formal education. And there's a lot of pain for parents and students alike who are trying to get funding for school and trying to make the transition from high school to college. So I know that there's a lot of pain there. I know that there's a market because I've interacted with those customers and I know what they struggle with. What is their pain? What keeps them up at night? And I had solutions based off my own personal experience to really formalize into some kind of educational product to really help students throughout this process and minimize pain. So even though I recognized that there was pain there, I knew what my customers needed and what kept them up at night, and I knew that they would buy some kind of product to help alleviate that pain, I really didn't know at first how to really bring this to light as the first product, how to really incentivize this knowledge. And so I really thought about, maybe it should be a book. I started writing a book. I even considered maybe doing some kind of online webinars. I also considered maybe just doing one-on-one consulting. But what came back to me over and over again was this idea of an online course. Why? Because I know how to edit, I know how to record, and really you can scrap something together, put it online and incentivize it, and you can replicate the process. You can expand from there, so additional products, just as long as you keep feedback open between yourself and the customer, they're going to tell you what else they want to know or how you can expand your product offering if you just have that feedback channel open. And that online course really allows me to have something on the side that I can replicate over and over again, or once I figure out what's working and what's not working, I can, for example, let's say Facebook advertising really works for this course. But once I really figure out the niche, the market, and how to effectively run that kind of campaign, I can continuously keep feeding that sales funnel to continue to sell that product and then replicate that for other courses down the line as well. Now, one of your first questions is probably, why start 2 businesses at once? Why not just focus on one thing, really execute well on that, and then move on to the next? Well, for me, you have to understand with what I'm trying to start with Spencer and our software startup, that is a long and arduous process. Even though we've made some great headway from the beginning of the inception of the idea, formalizing that, putting it together in wireframes and some kind of physical representation of what it's going to look like, and outlining the entire process of not only what the app's how you're going to interact with the app, but as well as a 3-5 year business plan. But when we're at a point right now where we're trying to seek funding, there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of pursuing people, for investment, but then just a lot of waiting as well in that meantime. So a reason why that having something that's sustainable on the back end that can be just replicated and is self-sufficient, that is really big for me. And that's why the online course really stuck out to me, is because in the meantime of waiting, I can still pursue something that has a low barrier to entry, that doesn't take too much time once I get this recorded, edited, and put onto a website. From there, it's just feeding the beast, so to speak. So just making sure that people are buying and that people are going through the sales funnel. Once the creative process has been completed, really from there, it's self-sufficient. So that's really important for me, and knowing that, okay, my end goal is I want to own a business of some sort, but I need to break away from the 9 to 5 to really be accountable for my time. So I had to think about really, what do I do to break the cycle? And if I can really, while still pursuing the startup, a software startup with Spencer, in that waiting game of like going really fast and stopping, I recognize that with an online course, it really allows me to have the freedom that if I do this well, it can provide the first step to really break away from the 9 to 5 so that I can really be truly accountable for my time, and it will allow me to focus on opening up a business, whether it be software, business, or anything else full time. So now that you understand why I started this business in congruence with the other software business, you have to understand what it actually is. So I had some formal education experience, as well as, like I said, I graduated early 3 times. So what I was able to do is, throughout that process of going through college and graduating with my associates at 18, bachelor's at 20, MBA by 22, I was able to kind of calculate, because I graduated early and I was very strategic on what I was doing, I was able to save $70,000 in tuition alone throughout that process. And that's a lot of money. So I know that I have the knowledge to replicate that for other students, because after I graduated with my bachelor's, I worked for my alma mater and actually worked in the admissions office to help students go through that process of going from high school to coming to the college. But with that came a lot of advising on how they should transfer credits, taking APs, dual enrollment courses. And not only was I able to learn from my own experiences of how I did it, but I was also able to see other students and advise other students on how they can replicate that process as well to really maximize their time at college and reduce their tuition and fees at a 4-year institution. So the first course I'm working on at this point is going to be an early graduation course. So imagine it as kind of a liaison between high school and college, so that if you're a freshman, sophomore, or even all the way up to a senior in high school, you'll have the strategy in mind as when you're thinking about things like APs, which are advanced placements, CLEPs, dual enrollment, all these different offerings. As you're going through that process in high school, you can strategically plan these things out instead of just firing by the hip, and knowing exactly how it'll transfer over to your 4 institution once you graduate from high school. So again, all this is doing is giving parents and students alike the ability to know exactly how things will transfer over, to plan the process in high school ahead of time so that you know exactly what you're doing and how it'll affect your tuition rates and fees in the long run. And then from there, as I'm building this course and explaining those different strategies, we're also going through and talking about return on investment. So I'm tying it back to them. So not only are they getting the information, but they're actively understanding how this information and how these strategies are actually saving them money and how much money it's saving them. And that's really important, whether you're starting your own company or side business, letting your customers understand as they're going through the process how your product really makes a difference. That's really all that sales boils down to in a successful sales pitch, is tying it to your customers. So it's not just the product, it's not just features, but as they're using your product, they're understanding actively how it is affecting their life for the better. So for those who are looking to start something on the side because they want to transition from their 9 to 5 or whatever they're doing at this point in time as well, clearly I don't have it all figured out. But from what I've seen from people who have done it successfully is that you need to start with your passions or something that you have the most knowledge in. And don't hold back on whatever that may be. So whatever you have the most knowledge in or whatever you have the most passion, could be you love the Powerpuff Girls, I don't know, SpongeBob. Even if it's very, very niche, or your interests are making you kind of think, well, I love this thing, but there's no way other people love this thing. you'd be surprised, and we're all connected, that I'm sure you can find a support group or someone who loves that thing just as much as you love it. And so if you're thinking about starting a side business or adding value to that group, just recognize that don't hold back on that passion and to just start doing. Because there are so many ways that you can add value to that group. You can add value to those same people who have that passion that you have. You can sell a product or add value in some form and incentivize that. So don't hold back, follow your passion. If you're looking for inspiration throughout this process, I have 2 books for you. If you really don't know where to start, the book Choose is a great choice in that it helps you align your passions with trying to define the market who can possibly buy your product and how to align your passion with a product as well. It's a really good place that if you don't know where to start, that would be a great book to read on trying to find who would buy your product and what your product might be. It's a good first stepping stone. The second one is called When to Jump, and it's actually just a compilation of stories from people who broke their corporate jobs 9 to 5 to head towards something that they're truly passionate in or what was their dream. So whether it be a high-end lawyer who wants to give up their job to be a professional racquetball player. There's a ton of stories in there that really just are super inspirational on recognizing that, yes, your dreams are not impossible, and just because you have a corporate job that pays well, you can still leave that job and pursue what you're most interested in. And that's where I want to leave you, is if you want to break away from your current job, you hate what you're doing, you want to transition out of it, just start doing something. Anything, really. It sounds super simplistic, but a lot of people just fail in the execution. And that's coming from experience on my own. I'm a planner, and then I allow insecurities for me to not fully execute on just what I need to do. It's okay to fail because failures aren't truly failures. They're learning experiences that provide additional tools to your tool belt whenever you go to the next thing that could prospectively be that thing that breaks you away from your 9 to 5. And just recognize that the first jump, especially transitioning out of a 9 to 5, is going to be the hardest, always. And don't let your insecurities hold you back, or what you think other people might think of you hold you back as well. And again, that's coming from personal experience. It's something that I struggle with daily. And this is why I started this blog, so that I could be an example of someone who's just putting themselves out there, documenting the process and showing and admitting I don't have it all figured out. And in success and in failure, you can follow me throughout this process because ultimately that's what it's for. It's for documentation. And I'd rather look back 10 years from now and see these videos and be embarrassed by it than to live with the regret of never actually executing on anything. If you're not happy with where you are, if you have a dream, if you want to be somewhere else entirely in life, it's never too late. Just start doing. Don't care what other people think. And stepping towards some direction is better than second guessing yourself and living with the regret.